Or consider a market downturn if you're an investor. The reactive response is fear, maybe panic selling. But in that space, you can choose to examine the fundamentals, to consider your long-term strategy, to see if there's opportunity in the chaos. This doesn't guarantee profit, but it means you're acting from choice rather than emotion. Frankl would say that our greatest task is not to avoid suffering. That's impossible. But to find meaning in it. When you understand that you can choose your response, suffering becomes a teacher rather than just a torment. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to demonstrate your values, to build character, to grow. This is where freedom truly lives. Not in the absence of constraints or difficulties, but in your power to choose how you engage with them. You can't always control what happens to you, but you can always control who you are in response to it. So here's your challenge for today and the week ahead. Practice noticing that space. When something triggers you, an email that annoys you, traffic that frustrates you, news that worries you, pause. Take a breath. Recognize that you're in that space right now, that magical gap between stimulus and response. And in that moment, you're free to choose. Choose responses that align with who you want to be. Choose responses that serve your growth. Choose responses that reflect your highest values rather than your base instincts. This is how you reclaim your power. This is how you find meaning, even in difficulty. This is how you become free. As Viktor Frankl showed us through his own life, our humanity isn't defined by what happens to us, but by how we choose to respond. And that choice, that freedom, is always available. That's it for today's Morning Digest. Thank you for spending this time with me. I wish you a thoughtful Sunday and a powerful week ahead. Stay informed, stay curious, and remember, you always have the power to choose your response.
Good morning. Welcome to your daily morning digest for Sunday, February 8, 2026. I'm here to give you the essential news, market moves, and life wisdom to start your weekend right. Let's dive into what happened this week and what you need to know. Markets stage dramatic recovery. What a week for global markets. After 3 consecutive days of heavy selling, Friday delivered one of the most significant rebounds in recent memory. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed above 50,000 for the first time in history, marking a historic milestone. This came just one day after the index shed 600 points amid risk-off sentiment that gripped financial markets worldwide. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq also posted sharp gains on Friday, recovering most of the losses from the brutal sell-off earlier in the week. What triggered this volatility? A combination of factors including concerns about inflation, mixed corporate earnings, and global economic uncertainty. But Friday's rebound suggests that investors are willing to buy the dip, viewing the pullback as a buying opportunity rather than the start of a deeper correction. This kind of whipsaw action is exactly what market analysts have been warning about for 2026: heightened volatility as central banks navigate uncertain economic conditions. The recovery shows that despite short-term panic, underlying confidence in equities remains strong, particularly in U.S. markets. Bitcoin's wild ride. If you thought stock market volatility was intense, the crypto markets were absolutely brutal this week. Bitcoin crashed as low as $61,000 on Thursday, briefly breaking that critical support level in what became the steepest one-day decline since the FTX collapse in November 2022. The sell-off was savage. Bitcoin plunged nearly 30% over just a few days, with more than $2 billion in long and short positions getting liquidated. But here's where it gets interesting. Just 24 hours after nearly falling below $60,000, Bitcoin staged an extraordinary comeback, surging back above $70,000 on Friday. The token rallied more than 11% in a single day, reaching as high as $71,458 before settling around $70,400. As of this morning, Bitcoin is trading around $68,500, still recovering from the midweek carnage. This kind of volatility is shaking out a lot of the speculative froth in crypto markets. Doubts about the long-term viability of digital assets are growing, especially as traditional markets show renewed strength. The crypto faithful will tell you this is just another cycle, but the intensity of this week's move suggests we're in for a bumpy ride ahead. For traders, this is either opportunity or danger depending on your risk tolerance and time horizon. Goldman Sachs goes all in on AI. In the technology sector, we're seeing the next phase of AI adoption move from experimentation to real-world deployment. Goldman Sachs announced this week that they're partnering with Anthropic to automate banking tasks using AI agents. This isn't just about chatbots or customer service, we're talking about fundamental banking operations being handed over to artificial intelligence systems. This follows the broader trend we're seeing across big tech companies are pointing to roughly $185 billion in capital expenditures for AI infrastructure in 2026. That's not a typo, $185 billion. These investments in data centers, power contracts, and specialized chips are being treated as strategic assets, not just IT spending. This is the new arms race. NVIDIA unveiled its latest flagship AI platform at CES earlier this year, codenamed Vera Rubin, and the industry is shifting from the hype phase to what experts call pragmatism. We're moving beyond the AI can do anything narrative to focusing on what actually works: small models, edge computing, and practical applications that deliver real business value. The reasoning models that emerged in late 2025 are now becoming the standard for problem solving across industries. Japan votes today. In global politics, there's a major election happening right now. Japan is holding a snap election today, February 8, with Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi leveraging her popularity to push a right-wing agenda focused on boosting the economy and military capabilities. This is all happening against the backdrop of growing tensions with China and what Tokyo views as an unpredictable relationship with Washington. Takaichi represents a more assertive Japan, willing to challenge post-war pacifist constraints and build up defense capabilities. The outcome of today's vote will signal how much appetite the Japanese public has for this harder-line approach. With regional security tensions at multi-decade highs, this election has implications far beyond Japan's borders. The market is watching this closely because any shift in Japan's defense or economic policy could ripple through Asian markets and affect trade relationships across the region. Japan remains the world's third-largest economy, and its strategic choices matter enormously. Ukraine peace talks target June deadline. President Zelensky revealed this week that the United States wants a Ukraine-Russia peace deal reached by June, despite the fact that no breakthrough has been achieved so far in negotiations. This is a significant timeline, putting pressure on both sides to make real progress in the coming months. The challenge is that the gaps between what Ukraine will accept and what Russia demands remain vast. Ukraine wants territorial integrity and security guarantees. Russia wants recognition of its territorial gains and limits on Ukraine's Western integration. These are not easy circles to square, and the June deadline may be more aspirational than realistic. For global markets, any movement toward a genuine peace agreement would be enormously positive, potentially easing energy price pressures and reducing geopolitical risk premiums. But until we see concrete signs of compromise, investors should remain cautious about pricing in peace that may not materialize. Natural disasters and sports victories. On Friday, a 5.8 magnitude earthquake struck south of Indonesia's Java Island, damaging buildings and injuring 36 people. It's a reminder that beyond market volatility and geopolitical tensions, natural disasters continue to pose real risks to communities around the world. Indonesia sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, making it particularly vulnerable to seismic activity. And on a much lighter note, India just won its 6th ICC Under-19 Cricket World Cup title, defeating England by 100 runs in Harare. The BCCI announced 7.5 crore rupees in rewards for the team and support staff. This underscores India's dominance in developing young cricket talent and maintaining their position as a powerhouse in the sport. For cricket fans, it's a proud moment showcasing the strength of India's grassroots cricket systems. The 2026 Winter Olympics. The 2026 Winter Olympics are underway, and athletes are already making history. Lindsey Vonn placed third in the second training session before it was cut short, showing that legendary athletes continue to compete at the highest levels. The Games are providing a welcome distraction from market volatility and geopolitical tensions, reminding us of human achievement and international cooperation at its best. What it all means. So where does this leave us as we head into the weekend? Markets have shown resilience, bouncing back from a scary midweek sell-off. But the volatility we're seeing is a warning sign that 2026 won't be a smooth ride. Whether it's stocks, crypto, geopolitics, or technology shifts, the pace of change is accelerating. For investors, the lesson is clear: stay diversified, don't panic during drawdowns, and keep your time horizon long. For everyone else, stay informed, stay flexible, and remember that while headlines can be dramatic, the fundamentals of building wealth and living well remain unchanged: discipline, patience, and smart risk management. And now, let's shift gears to today's Life Wisdom segment. Today's Life Wisdom: the pleasure of finding things out. Today's wisdom comes from one of the most brilliant minds of the 20th century, physicist Richard Feynman. His philosophy was captured beautifully in the phrase, "the pleasure of finding things out." But what Feynman really emphasized, and what we often overlook, is the foundation that makes real discovery possible: intellectual honesty. Feynman famously said, "The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool." Think about that for a moment. In a world full of information, misinformation, strong opinions, and social pressure, the hardest challenge isn't learning what's true, it's being honest with ourselves about what we actually know versus what we just believe or hope is true. The courage to say, "I don't know." In our professional lives, our social interactions, even in our own thoughts, there's enormous pressure to have answers. We're expected to have opinions on everything, to be confident, to know what we're talking about. But Feynman's insight cuts against all of that. He's telling us that intellectual integrity requires the courage to say 3 simple words: "I don't know." This isn't weakness. It's the opposite. Admitting ignorance is the starting point of genuine learning. When you pretend to understand something you don't, you close the door to actually understanding it. You stop asking questions. You stop being curious. You fool yourself into thinking you've arrived when you've barely started the journey. Think about the areas of your life where you've been pretending to understand something. Maybe it's financial markets, maybe it's a technical skill at work, maybe it's understanding what someone you care about really needs from you. How much clearer would things become if you simply admitted to yourself, "I don't actually understand this as well as I pretend to"? Applying this to real life. This principle applies everywhere. In investing, intellectual honesty means admitting when you don't understand an asset class or a company's business model, rather than following the herd into something you can't actually evaluate. How many people lost money this week in Bitcoin's crash because they never honestly asked themselves if they understood what they were buying? In relationships, it means admitting when you don't understand someone's perspective or feelings, rather than assuming you know what they're thinking. So many conflicts escalate because both sides are certain they understand the other, when really they're operating on assumptions and projections. In your career, it means acknowledging the limits of your expertise rather than pretending to be an expert in everything. The most respected professionals aren't the ones who claim to know everything, they're the ones who know what they know deeply, admit what they don't know clearly, and are always learning. The scientific mindset in daily life. Feynman was advocating for what we might call a scientific mindset, but not in the narrow sense of lab coats and equations. He meant approaching life with curiosity, skepticism of your own beliefs, and willingness to update your understanding when evidence contradicts what you thought was true. This is hard. Our brains are wired to seek certainty, to create coherent narratives, to defend our existing beliefs. We feel uncomfortable with ambiguity and not knowing. But that discomfort is exactly where growth happens. The pleasure of finding things out, as Feynman put it, comes from embracing that uncertainty and then systematically working to resolve it. A challenge for today. So here's a challenge as you go into your Sunday. Pick one area where you've been operating with confidence but maybe not with real understanding. It could be anything: a political opinion you've never really examined, a financial decision you're making based on assumptions, a judgment about someone that you've never questioned. Ask yourself honestly, do I really know this? What would I need to learn to actually understand it? What am I taking on faith? What am I assuming? And then, with Feynman's principle in mind, embrace the discomfort of admitting, "I don't know this as well as I should." That admission isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning. Because once you've stopped fooling yourself, you can start the real work of finding things out. And as Feynman discovered throughout his remarkable life, there's genuine pleasure in that process, the pleasure of moving from ignorance to understanding, from assumption to knowledge, from fooling yourself to seeing clearly. Closing thought. In a world that rewards confident opinions and punishes uncertainty, being willing to say "I don't know" is an act of courage. But it's also an act of wisdom. Because the alternative, fooling yourself, is a trap that keeps you from ever truly learning, growing, or understanding the world as it actually is. So embrace intellectual honesty this week. Stop fooling yourself. Start asking real questions. And discover the pleasure of finding things out. That's your daily morning digest for Sunday, February 8, 2026. Stay curious, stay honest with yourself, and have a great weekend. We'll be back tomorrow with more news, insights, and wisdom to start your day right.